All right, so hi everybody. Today we are back for our second video. Again, going with I Am Not My Thoughts. And today it's going to be myself, Beatrice, and also my coworker, April, that will be presenting.
Hello.
So for the second session, we're going to focus more on core beliefs. A brief overview of the key ideas that we will touch upon will be where do core beliefs come from, things to know about core beliefs, common core beliefs, CBT model and core beliefs, some examples as well, and how to practice identifying our own core beliefs.
All right. So as Beatrice mentioned, my name is April, and I'm going to be kind of doing a little bit of an introduction to core beliefs. So where do core beliefs come from? Well, oftentimes they develop in our childhood. That's not always the case, but more likely than not, they have. We start to make sense and meaning of the world and how we kind of present in it. And so that can mean that we've had a lot of practice carrying around negative core beliefs about ourselves or the world that aren't accurate or true.
I have a quick question,
Yeah.
April. So, for the development of core beliefs, like in childhood, like is there like an age where these core beliefs start developing? Like once you're like 5 years old, or is there a set age?
It's honestly could be like from the time that you're born. So we can always touch upon this in another presentation, but the idea behind attachment theory says that depending on how our caregivers and other adults in the world respond to us, we start making meaning of whether the world is safe, who is safe to us, and how we kind of see ourselves in the world. So it kind of is just based off of the things that we're taking in from around us, like all of the messages and the ways that we feel about ourselves as we kind of grow up in the world.
Okay, thank you.
And so kind of just to touch on your question, Beatrice. So, where are these coming from? These core beliefs can sometimes be fostered through kind of hearing people kind of talk about our limitations and maybe not even giving us guidance on how to expand on our limitations. So then we start to think of ourselves as maybe incompetent, or we might start to fear kind of stepping out of our comfort zones because of our limitations. And then so we start having certain kind of thoughts based on whether or not people are helping us and guiding us to maybe improve on some of our weaknesses or not highlighting our strengths. And we'll kind of, again, dive a little bit deeper into that. But core beliefs can also be a result of abuse. So people who suffer abuse might start to internalize that behavior that they were a victim to. And so it might start telling them things about who is safe, if the world is safe for them, and what it means about them that, sometimes that they had to go through this abuse from people. Same with trauma. Again, I kind of mentioned that typically core beliefs develop in childhood, but they can develop also later in life. So especially when there's traumatic experiences that might have happened to us somewhere down the line and kind of shook our understanding of the world. And then there's also societal pressures. What does society expect of us? What do our families expect of us? This is kind of something to keep in mind in terms of like culture. So different cultures have different expectations of people, and whether or not we are able to meet them, again, can start developing a core belief about ourselves. And then some people experience bullying. Again, this is another form of abuse, but internalizing that bullying behavior that is coming at you, again, starts to tell you different things about the world and how you feel about yourself. So things to know about core beliefs, because they are learned, that means you are able to unlearn them. And I think you might have picked up on that a lot of times. The reason people present in therapy or counseling or want to kind of do self development is because these core beliefs sometimes are negative core beliefs about ourselves. And so that's why we want to unlearn them, because as I mentioned before, a lot of times they are not accurate or they are not true. And so there's a couple psychology terms that kind of play into this, but everybody has a confirmation bias. So basically, what we do as humans, just to make sense of the world, is that we look for information that confirms or supports our held beliefs, just so we're not confusing ourselves. So everybody has these biases, and it's really hard to work against them. So that is why it's so important with CBT to constantly practice how to challenge these biases and to also incorporate behavior change, which we'll get to, in later sessions. But just to be mindful that we all have a confirmation bias. And some people even can develop imposter syndrome. So it's a belief that we don't deserve or we didn't earn our successes. Again, this can come from maybe not meeting societal or cultural expectations. And so we constantly feel like we're underperforming, or that somebody is going to find us out and see that we're not qualified for, the job that we took, or the relationships that we have, whatever it may be. Some people can feel like they are an imposter in their lives. And so some of the more common core beliefs that we see are things like this idea that I'm unlovable, or I'm not worthy, or I'm ugly, or I'm a bad person, I'm not good enough, I'm weird or maybe abnormal, I'm dumb, I'm a burden, I'm helpless. And again, kind of based on what we kind of already went through, these are not uh, thoughts or beliefs that we are born into this world with. We learn these thoughts from, again, the messages that we receive from other people and the way that the world treats us. And so that's why it's important to understand that they are not accurate or true, because a lot of times we get these messages from people who maybe not always have our best interest in mind, or we're going through things themselves. And so, they were just being hurtful. And so something that they said really stuck with us, but it doesn't mean that it's true. So there's a lot of ways that we receive messages from the world, and then we kind of get stuck with these negative core beliefs about ourselves.
I have a question about these. So these examples, like, they're pretty negative.
Mhm.
But is it hard to change these core beliefs?
It can be really challenging. As I mentioned, like if they're developing in childhood, um, that means that we've had a lot of practice like carrying around these negative core beliefs about ourselves. And just kind of how we were mentioning about the confirmation bias, if we're always searching our environment to tell us that we're unlovable or we're not worthy, right, we're really solidifying that belief about ourselves. And it happens so seamlessly sometimes that we don't even realize we're doing it. And we continue to kind of tell ourselves this story. So it is about, again, like kind of unlearning all of that history and then having to learn this new story about yourself, that you are lovable, and looking for all those different ways to prove to yourself that you are. So it does take a lot of practice sometimes. And I think that's why, if you do notice that this is something that you're dealing with, it would be important to reach out for professional help. So working with a therapist or some sort of behavioral health professional, because I think other people outside of you are able to kind of help you challenge this and hold you accountable to challenge these thoughts, because it can kind of get discouraging when you're trying to do it alone, and when it's something that, again, you just try to tell this story to yourself over and over. So it can be really helpful to call on support to help you challenge these beliefs. And so we introduced the cognitive model last time. We talked about how thoughts impact our feelings, and how our feelings are a big influence on our behaviors. And depending on what kind of thoughts we're having, for the purpose of this presentation, we're focusing on those negative thoughts. If we're having negative thoughts, we're going to start having those negative feelings, and then we're going to act in ways that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise if we were having more positive thoughts. And we can see that core beliefs is now sitting on top of thoughts, because a lot of times our automatic negative thoughts are stemming from that core belief. And so that's why you kind of have to target that core belief so that you can change that pattern into a more positive one. So some questions to ask yourself, just to, dive a little deeper, understand a little bit more about your core beliefs. When you think about that thought, maybe it's that I'm unlovable or I'm not good enough. If you this, when is my earliest memory that I felt like I was not good enough, or I was unlovable? And how have you perpetuated it? Or how have other relationships that you have perpetuated it? Are people criticizing you, judging you, and how are you receiving that information? That's really important to kind of know that another part of challenging these core beliefs is not only to do it yourself, but to also challenge other people who come to you with that kind of negative feedback. So whose voices do you hear when you think of these thoughts? And would a friend who has your best interest in mind, would they agree or disagree? And, kind of put yourself in their shoes. What would they say about you to help you challenge this core belief? So now that we have, a basic understanding of our core belief, or sometimes core beliefs, sometimes people have multiple negative core beliefs, how do we begin to challenge it? And so that's when we're going to kind of jump in to our third video, the unhelpful thought patterns. So these are going to provide the framework for you to understand how those intrusive thoughts feed into that negative core belief. And once you start being aware of those unhelpful thought patterns, that's when you're going to be able to challenge them a little bit more.
Thank you, April. That was really helpful. So yeah, again, we are going to have a fourth and a fifth video coming up. The fourth video will concentrate, I'm sorry, a third, fourth, and fifth video. The third video will concentrate on unhelpful thought patterns. The fourth video will be on thought log. And the fifth video will be to review everything, kind of bring everything together. Again, thank you for everybody who joined us today. And thank you, April, for presenting. And if you want to follow us on social media, we could be found at Vista Hills Smart Care. And we do post on there Monday through Friday on different topics related to mental health. So make sure to check us out. Thank you.
Thank you.